Good evening, everyone. Hello, you are all muted, just to let you know, for those of you who've ever been on a Wednesday morning call, you're coming in muted. So it's good to have you all, getting a few more people in the room, but it's wonderful to have you all with us this evening. Thank you all so much for coming. Give people just another moment or two as they join in, and then we will get started. Those of you who have been to meetings, including annual convention with me before, know I like to start promptly so that we can start and end on time. All right. Give just another moment or two as we're filling up our Zoom room here. Again, thank you all for coming this evening. It's so great. So wonderful to have so many. Yes.
I'll need to leave about 10 minutes early. It won't be anything that you said or anything that I was offended about. I need to drive down the street.
Wonderful. Thank you for letting me know, Sandra. I will not turn crying into my
I don't know, Sandra. I don't know that you should make that presumption. There's still a lot of time between now and 10 of 7. You never know what
you
could
never
happen.
know what I'm you know
I mean, I'm on the call. I mean, you don't know, Sandra.
Okay, well, I will I'll be vocal if you say anything offensive. I'll give you guys permission.
You'll storm out in a tizzy if it becomes okay. Be sure to storm out in a tizzy should it become that of an issue. And as the last few people are leaving, just to let you all know, we are recording tonight's resolution listening session. That way, those who are unable to make it and unable to join us tonight can watch later. And that way, all of those who are participating in our 2025 annual convention are able to hear what our presenters have to say, what our submitters have to say, as well as the questions that you all bring into the room. So just know we are being recorded for posterity, and this will be posted on YouTube in the next day or so. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to open us in a word of prayer. So if you will all join me in that. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, source of all wisdom and understanding, be present with those of us who prepare to take counsel in the 241st Annual Convention of the Episcopal Church in Connecticut for the renewal and mission of your church. Teach us in all things to seek first your honor and glory. Guide us to perceive what is right, and grant us both the courage to pursue it and the grace to accomplish it. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. Well, in light of some quick introductions, I'll introduce myself first, and then I'm going to turn it over to Brad, who's going to take on the first part of our resolution listening session this evening. So I am Stacy Cole, for those of you who have not met me before. I am your Secretary of Convention and the Diocese. You are going to see a lot more of me pretty soon. So I am responsible for our convention. And I will be the one up at the front frantically taking notes and directing convention. But I'm excited to be here with you all tonight for this listening session. And now, Brad Babbitt.
Thank you, Stacy. Good evening, everybody. I'm Brad Babbitt. I'm the Chancellor of the Diocese, which is just a fancy name for the bishop's lawyer. It's a voluntary position. I'm not on staff. I don't have an office in Meriden. My office is in Hartford. And when I'm not being the chancellor, I'm a lawyer with a law firm in Hartford. As chancellor, I have the opportunity to advise the bishops that they are my clients. And so when convention comes around, I advise them in Robert's Rules of Order. which I'm sure you'll be surprised is not a big topic at the seminaries, as I understand it. They don't teach Robert Rules of Order. They spend their time on other things, much more productive things. So I've been asked this evening to say a few words, and I will be brief, about what resolutions are and how they come before convention. So I'm going to do that, and I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has one. A resolution is just another name for a proposal. It's very akin, it's very similar to a motion. I'm sure you're probably familiar with those. Resolutions are set apart from motions only in the fact that they are typically more formal. There's a structure to how they're typically written, and they're typically in writing and submitted before the convention or any meeting starts. So our resolutions are submitted in writing, and they're submitted pursuant to our canons. They're submitted 4 weeks before convention starts, and that's mostly administrative. To allow everybody to see the resolutions to participate in an event like this, where there are opportunities to hear about them from the proponents and to ask questions about the resolutions. It also allows us, in the old days, it allowed us to print things with resolutions on them. We don't do that anymore, but we put them on the website, for example. How does a resolution come before convention? Well, pursuant to ECCT's Canon 12, which governs convention procedures, and you can find our canons on the ECCT website. It's late in the day, I guess. Pursuant to that canon, Canon 12 of our diocesan canons, any 5 members of convention can get together and submit a resolution 4 weeks before convention. And once that happens, the resolution goes to our Secretary of Convention, Secretary Cole. She then brings all of the resolutions to the Faith and Order Commission. That's our group of volunteers and ordained leaders here in ECCT who have as a role the review and maintenance, if you will, of our Constitution and canons. We, as a group, as a commission, we look at our canons and Constitution on a regular basis, evaluate whether they're working well, whether we need changes, what kind of changes might make sense. And as a group, we also review resolutions submitted to convention. We don't review them from a merits perspective. We don't weigh in and say, hey, this is a good idea or this is a bad idea from a merits perspective, but we look at them for 2 purposes. The first is it clear? Is the English make sense? Can we understand what it's asking? Because if we can, then we would hope and assume that the members of convention can. So this is an opportunity for us to, there's some wordsmithing involved. I think there should be a comma here. This should be capitalized. And this, we need to put this in the right format. Trying not to change the substance, but to make it clearer. So that's the first job of Faith and Order. The second job of Faith and Order is to evaluate a resolution to make sure that it is within the authority of convention. As an example, if some group of people submitted a resolution to convention, asking that or ordering that no left-handed persons should ever be elected bishop ever again. And I don't know why they would feel that way, but if that was the resolution, that resolution would be out of order, because the canons of the Episcopal Church, the big national church, the global church, the Episcopal Church, that establishes who can and who cannot be a bishop. And being left-handed or right-handed is not part of the equation. Anybody can use either hand or both hands if they choose and still be a bishop. So we, looking at that resolution, would say, I don't think convention has the right to say that people who are left-handed can't be a bishop. And so what we would do is we would go back to that group of proponents and say, what are you really trying to do here? Do you really mean to say that, or did you mean to say something else? And in the past, when this very rarely has come up, we've been able to work with the proponents to help rephrase and help revise the the resolutions to bring them within the authority of convention. So that's the role of our Faith and Order Commission. It really isn't a gatekeeper. It's more of a trying to make the resolutions clear and to make sure that the resolution is something that the convention can do. Does that help, Stacy? Does that cover the topic?
I think that's very helpful. If you have questions or wonderings, I would invite you to raise your Zoom hand. That's down in that reactions button at the bottom of your screen. Or if you can't find it, turn on your camera and wave frantically at me. And I'll notice you and would be happy. Are there questions about how a resolution becomes a submitted final resolution? And this doesn't work quite as well as how a bill becomes a law. That's got such a better ring to it. But how a resolution becomes approved by convention just doesn't have the same oomph behind it. But that is what the next part is, of course, is that now they come to you all. For those of you who are delegates of convention, is that these which have been looked over by Faith and Order, put in the correct format, the right letters capitalized, resolved, capitalized, that capitalized, the semicolon in the right place. Yes, it all matters. And they are now brought before all of you, ready to be considered at an annual convention. Are there any questions about kind of this first half of the process before we move into questions and looking a little bit more deeply at our individual resolutions? All right. Brad, you seem to have done a stellar job. Everyone is crystal clear about how a resolution becomes a submitted resolution.
They're all pondering what's wrong with left-handed bishops, I think.
Yes, all of us.
I'll ask
Often
a question
ponder.
then, if you're looking
Excellent.
for questions.
Yes.
Only delegates get to vote, right? Like people on the standing committee don't, or the state. Stacy, do you get to vote? Are you considered a proper voter? Does the chancellor get to vote? I mean, who exactly gets to vote and who doesn't?
Great question, and it's a question that's answered by our Constitution, which identifies who the members of convention are. The members are 2 delegates from each parish, worshiping community, and intentional Episcopal community. So that's the lay side of the house, although we all sit together. It's not like we have 2 different houses, but that's the laity side. And then all clergy canonically resident in Connecticut. So that's the ordained side of the house. The chancellor does get a vote, as does the treasurer and any assistant treasurers. The standing committee members who are not otherwise already members of convention, they are members of convention. So if a standing committee member is not a delegate from a parish, that person from the standing committee also gets to vote. But the identity of the members of convention is laid out in our Constitution.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Ted. Yes, Valerie?
I'll take down my hand. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have much of a voice. I apologize for
that's
that.
okay.
Also, Brad, Mission Council
Mhm.
members get.
Also true. Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to leave them out.
Yes, just saying.
It's a long list of folks.
It
But
is.
You're absolutely right, Valerie. Thank you.
You're
Yep.
welcome.
Yeah. Mission Council and our deputies to General Convention.
That's
Receive
true too.
yeah.
And the Providence One
Province One.
representative.
Yeah. And for those who are wondering, I have been putting some links in the chat. So there's a link to the ECCT governance page, which includes links to our Constitution and canons, as well as a link to the Constitution and canons of the Episcopal Church, capital T, capital E, capital C, which of course comes above all of our Constitution and canons, as well as a link to our Faith and Order Commission, just so you can see their faces and say hello to the wonderful, wonderful people who spend many, many hours poring over resolutions, looking at capitalization and commas. So huge thanks to this group for their hard work. Right. Are there any other questions before we dive in tonight? All right. Well, hopefully all of you have made your way to our resolutions submitted to convention page. I am going to post the exact link to that in the chat. But these are our resolutions submitted to convention. As of this afternoon, we now have 6. We did have 7, but the 7th one was withdrawn by the proposers. You'll note that actually on the page, it says withdrawn by the proposers. That is the prerogative of the proposer of any resolution before it hits the floor of convention. It can be withdrawn, and that decision was made. So we are now have 6 resolutions that will be coming before convention, including 2 mergers. We are not going to be talking too much about the mergers tonight, simply because the mergers, I can assure you, they have done their work. Let me tell you the amount of work that goes into merging a parish. For those of you who have perhaps never walked through this process, is significant. It is akin to a marriage, and one that you want to start off healthy. So they have done their work. They have done all of their due diligence. They are ready, excited, and one would say very, very anxious to have convention finalize their mergers and allow them to really step forward into that new life. So those 2 resolutions, the mergers of St. John's in East Windsor and Grace Windsor and St. Paul's Bantam and Christ Church Bethlehem, unless there's a question that's really specific about mergers, we will not spend too much time on them. Other than that, we're going to just go in order. I am going to move quickly past budget of convention because hopefully all of you were able to attend one of the budget listening sessions. If not, the proposed 2026 budget of convention listening sessions were recorded. And I'm posting a link to that YouTube video right now. I do encourage you to watch that particular video, as it will unpack how the 2026 budget of convention was formed, as well as really talk about the math behind it, which I promise you none of you want me to talk about math. You want to hear that from Canon Rosanna Rosado. The math behind it, as well as how every dollar that comes in to ECCT is being sent back out in ministry, and how diligently the staff works to fulfill that. So I encourage you to listen to that budget listening session and really look into that. We could take a moment. They do really address the 2026 minimum clergy salary compensation, but I will open the floor if there's any questions about that. This is something that's pretty familiar, I think, our 2026 minimum clergy compensation schedule. I will note we added the word minimum. It is the same clergy compensation resolution you see year after year. We just added the word minimum to help alleviate some confusion that comes up every year of, wait, what is this? And this is the minimum, sets the minimum for a priest or a deacon in the diocese. So again, the resolution itself, I will read it out, but it is not all that complicated. It simply says, resolved that the 241st Convention of the Episcopal Diocese of Connecticut adopts the 2026 minimum clergy compensation schedule as proposed and appended to this resolution. And I strongly encourage you to look through that and talk it through with your parish and vestry. I'm going to pause for just a moment. Any questions, any concerns? All right. I'm going to move us on to resolution number 3, and I will just pause for a moment to explain the numbering. This is something else Faith and Order does, is puts resolutions in order. I will tell you, the order is not necessarily, this is not because we're like, ooh, we really want to put this one early in the day so people are in a good mood and let's put this one. It really is about laying them out in the time spans in which we have throughout our time at convention. Because as you know, if you come to a convention before, we have blocks of legislative time interrupted by worship and eating together and celebrating together. And so we kind of have to lay out resolutions knowing how long they'll take to present. Some of these we just historically know how long it takes to present a budget. And others we don't know as well how long it may take to present them. So we put them in places where there's a little bit more space around it. So that's really where the numbering comes from. There's no secret sauce to it. Sometimes we guess, hey, this one is going to be a quick one and it takes longer. And sometimes we say this one's going to be a long one and it's done in 10 minutes. So there's no secret sauce. We do the best we can to put them in an order that will bring them before convention as smoothly as possible. Diana, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Stacy. I'm not sure if I can get back to the resolution itself.
Yep.
The supporting documents, rather, where it says something about retired clergy earnings cap. That cap only pertains to anyone under 72. If you're over 72, there is no earnings cap.
Yes. That is true. Let me make a note of that and I will check in with that with Rosanna, particularly with this document, to see if that needs to be clarified and how we would need to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, and you said that's before 72.
Right. Mandatory retirement is at 72.
72.
And
So
once
after that,
there is no cap. You can make
Okay.
as much as you want, according to the IRS, apparently.
because that's what everybody wants to do after the age of 72 is work more.
Of course.
Perfect. Thank you so much for pointing that out, Dana. And I will follow up with Canon Rosanna because again, as I've said before, we don't want me messing with math. And I will check in with her. Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy.
Other questions before we move on to resolution 3? All right, seeing none. I'm going to move us on to resolution number 3, revising ECCT hiring process. This one is proposed by the Mission Council. Now we'll read it out. Resolved that the 241st Annual Convention of the Episcopal Diocese of Connecticut deletes in its entirety the 5th paragraph of resolution number 3 to the 234th Annual Convention of the Episcopal Diocese of Connecticut, convened in 2018, and replaces it with the following. Resolved that the Mission Council adopt and oversee a process by which searches to fill ECCT staff positions will promote, to every extent possible, consideration of people of color as candidates for ECCT staff positions. And there is, of course, supporting documents with this, and I'm going to open this up if there are questions. Or also we have with us tonight one of the people who has worked very, very hard on this particular area within our Mission Council, Valerie Stanley. Welcome, Valerie, if there's anything you'd like to offer to the group of why this is important that we make this change and make this update to this particular resolution.
Are there any particular questions that anyone has? So I think we looked at the resolution and asked questions about how it was working. And we found out that we weren't really able to capture the data, and we were adding some extra steps for the bishop to come back to Mission Council and say, I have this position. There were only 2 candidates. Neither of them were people of color. Do I have your permission to make the offer? It kind of got to be almost a bit ridiculous, hate to say that, for some of these positions where there were only 2 people, neither of them were people of color. How were we capturing the information? Because we really didn't know. People weren't being given the opportunity to self-identify. So we changed that a bit. People now have the ability to self-identify if they are applying as a candidate. That information gets separated from their application, gets sent to the Director of Human Resources. And so she has that data. Bishop or whoever the hiring supervisor is gets the opportunity to interview, make the selection. If there are fewer than the certain number, it's all there in the resolution as supporting data. They don't have to go through contacting the Mission Council for permission to do that. It's only over a certain amount, and then we would discuss it. It just made sense to make the process cleaner and smoother. And we have documentation to back up the information that we're presenting.
Andra, I see your hand up. Yes, please.
I have a process question. I know
Okay.
that we're only voting on what's in the actual text of the resolution, not the explanation. But how does
Correct.
it work when there is a supporting document that's referenced in the resolution?
So let's see. I don't know that the supporting document is actually referenced in the resolution. Let me double check really quick. So the supporting document in this case is let me get back into my resolution real quick because I was also pulling up the original resolution for those who didn't know it. Let me read that off really quickly. The original resolution we're clearing, if that's the right word, we're replacing. I'll read that in a moment.
Yeah.
So the resolution simply says a process. It does not specify the process. The one in which Mission Council has adopted on an interim basis is a process which they could choose. Mission Council is not saying this is the process that will last forever. The resolution which we are potentially voting on is to say it is up to Mission Council to establish a process. The one that is currently being used on an interim basis is given as an example of what this process could look like. But it could be changed to adjust should the process prove to be not as effective as we think it needs to be, should Connecticut law change and we find that the process is not fitting within Connecticut employment law. So while the explanation does have a process, it is not the permanent process. The resolution leaves room open for Mission Council to change a process should it need it to be.
Thank you for that. I'm still not offended, so you'll have to try harder.
Man, I'll work harder. So just to be sure everybody's up to speed also on what the resolution is looking to replace. The original resolution, that the resolve that we are looking at, reads as such. Be it further resolved that all searches for ECCT staff positions include at least 2 people of color, or 1 if there are fewer than 4 people in total among the final candidates interviewed. So that gives you a little bit more context as well. Are there other questions about this particular resolution? Wonderings? Well done, Valerie. You explained it well. And thank you so much for your work on this, Valerie.
No problem.
All right. As I said, unless somebody has questions about a merger, which I'm going to pause here for a moment and just see if there's any questions about mergers or why those are coming to convention. But we do vote on mergers. Convention is the final step in the merger process. We affirm the mergers. So those are the 4 and 5 in our list of resolutions this year. And then resolution number 6, supply clergy compensation. And this is also being submitted by, or excuse me, proposed by the Mission Council. Now we'll read it aloud. Resolved that the 241st Convention of the Episcopal Diocese of Connecticut adopts the following minimum supply clergy compensation for 2026. For 1 service, $250. For 2 services, $325. All in addition to mileage reimbursement at the rate designated by the IRS. I will open the space to questions about this resolution. Ted, I see your hand.
Yeah,
And Shaw?
I'm just assuming this means like 2 services on the same Sunday. Like in the same Sunday morning versus one Sunday you get $250 and then you get $325 for the second week later. I mean, right?
It does. In fact, you may see Brad Babbitt giggling a little bit there because we had a whole conversation in Faith and Order about do we need to clarify that. And so thank you. And yes, it does mean 1 service on one in one day.
You're there the whole time. So
yeah.
it's a 1 trip.
1 trip. Yeah. 1 trip. I like that. Evelyn, yes.
I was trying to turn it on and it said, do you allow Zoom to record the audio? Okay. Some of you know that I've been asking this question for a few years now, so I appreciate very much the Mission Council has made this step. I do have I have 1 comment and 1 question. Mm-hmm. 1 comment is it doesn't talk about any other services like funerals or weddings. And the fees for those if there's a minimum. And the second is the comment, some churches may find it hard to come up with the $250. I've been sort of privately negotiating with some parishes and some of them say, we can't do that. So they offered $225 at one church that I went to, and that I said fine, but I do want to at least raise the flag that for some parishes that even this raise will be difficult. And I don't know if there's some way to figure out how to make room for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that, Evelyn. And yes, the discussion was had. I'm going to put on my Secretary of the Diocese hat for the moment. This is what happens when you live in split personality. And I live wearing two hats: Secretary of Convention, which is the personality leading this meeting. And now I'm going to put on my Secretary of the Diocese hat, which is the person who serves on Mission Council and who helps submit this resolution. There was discussion about the fact that we did not include marriage and funerals and other types of services. And I believe that there is conversation happening about do we make those changes in future? And there is, I believe, a group of supply clergy that has begun meeting under in relationship with Bishop Jeff and Bishop Laura to talk about exactly these issues. So if you are supply clergy and you're part of that group, that's a great place to continue to bring forward these questions. And that's where those conversations are happening. And how do we bring that forward in resolutions? Rebecca, and in terms of the, sorry, I missed the second half of your question. And in terms of the second half, yeah, I wish I had an answer to that. And I definitely, I think all of us, the proposers of this particular resolution, and I believe all of us sense that. And we are also walking with clergy who are saying, I need to be able to pay my rent. So it's, you know, that rock and a hard place that we proverbially live between. And so this has been done, I will say, with a lot of research. If you read some of the supporting or look at the explanation, you'll see the comparable rates in dioceses that neighbor ours. I will say the Diocese of Massachusetts has not raised their rates, I believe, in 6 years. So they also are lagging quite far behind in this as well, whereas Diocese of New York raises them much more regularly to stay in line with cost of living adjustments, which functionally is what this raise in compensation does, is that it brings them in line with what are the cost of living, the COLA increases that clergy have received over the last several years, and that have not been applied to our supply clergy. Rebecca, I see your hand up, and then Bonnie. Oh, Rebecca? Oh.
Unmute. Okay, sorry,
There you are.
struggling to unmute.
It's okay.
Okay,
It's
so
okay.
two questions. One, can you
Yeah.
tell me what the previous rate was? And secondarily, at one point in time, we actually had 3 services on Sunday at our church. We do not at this time, but I'm wondering if that was thought about in this, and I will take my answer offline.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. So the previous rates were $200 for one service and $250 for 2 services. The conversation regarding 3 services, because it is, I will be honest, so unusual for a parish to have 3 services, the discussion really didn't materialize of do we add a 3rd service. I think that that definitely could be part of the conversation included in the deeper levels of kind of the marriages, funerals, other services. But right now we leave that to the parish and the clergy to discuss if there's a 3rd or 4th service on a particular day. Great question. Bonnie.
I was wondering if there was any discussion that these rates would automatically change when the recommended COLAs came out.
What a great question. Thank you, Bonnie. And I also just want to say, there are a few members of Mission Council in the room, and you all are welcome to pipe in as well, because you all are part of this just like me. So feel free to join in as well with responses. So yes, moving forward, we do anticipate the supply clergy rates to now become, after this year, to become part of clergy compensation schedule. So that clergy compensation that was all the way back up at resolution 2, we anticipate moving supply clergy rates to more closely tie with that. The reason that we kept them separate this year was, honestly, convention has never really looked at supply clergy rates. And so we wanted to bring this conversation before convention in an open and honest way without just kind of having it get attached to clergy compensation unexpectedly. So wanted to really bring this forward and give our supply clergy the opportunity to also really talk about the challenges they face. As well as allowing our parishes to really think about, how do we live into this together? What could this look like? Knowing the financial challenges everyone is facing on both the parish side and the clergy side. But yes, moving forward, we are anticipating attaching this to the clergy compensation rate and keeping it more closely tied to that COLA. That will also, I think, help where we won't see these, what I would call can feel like a big leap. And that's because we're trying to play catch up from 5 years of COLA. Shaw, and then Dana.
Yes, I've been involved in salary and benefits. I was chair of a committee in another diocese. What a lot of people don't realize is when they freeze and they say we're not increasing it, what they're doing is giving an inflation pay cut. So in other words, if you think about it, well, we haven't raised it because and the inflation goes up, you've just given the supply clergy a pay cut. So that point, I think I'm looking around the room, it doesn't seem to be a surprise or anything, but it's something that some people just don't think about. I mention it that way.
Yeah. Thank you, Shaw. Dana Campbell.
I'm just curious about how many supply clergy are looking to support themselves by supply, not being retired, for example. It makes sense to me to keep raising if they're trying to actually, if that's their means of support. I don't know if we have any such people. Do you know?
I unfortunately don't know the answer to that. That is such a great question. I do know that, that there are clergy between cures who do rely on supply, who are, when they're between jobs, who rely on it. There are some clergy who are in part-time positions who rely on supply to kind of fill out their income. So supply is a really important part. So it's not only our retired clergy who are doing this, it's also a lot of times too our younger clergy who perhaps, because as you know, a full-time position, a full-time priest or rector position is hard to find in Connecticut.
Right.
You'll often get clergy people who are working a part-time position and then may supply the other Sundays. So
yeah. Thank you. That's very helpful. I hadn't thought about all those other possibilities.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking from the standpoint of a retired person that, we've been pretty well taken care of by the church already.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions about this particular resolution? These are great questions, great conversation. Well, not seeing any frantically waving hands or raised hands, I will tell you, I scheduled this time to go from 6 to 7:30, having no idea how many resolutions we would have. So I schedule big, and it turns out that's all the resolutions that will be coming before our convention this year, because as I said, resolution 7 has been withdrawn by the submitters, by the proposers.